I welcome all the participants. Here in the topic, social justice, anti-oppressive social work practice are detailed accounts. So social justice we have discussed so much in length and breadth. We have also discussed, while we discuss about the social justice and human rights, about the oppressive social classes and then classes which are disadvantaged. So here we are going to discuss about the this particular approach, and this approach actually emphasizes the need for social workers to be critically aware of power and then privileges, as we all as the as well as the structural forces that actually perpetuate the inequality within the society. So through the lens of the anti-oppressive practices, social workers strive to to empower the clients who are oppressed, in advocate for the equitable policies because they don't have the power to come forward. We have to also work towards this dismantling the oppressive system. So it is at a very larger aspect. It's a macro level intervention. We have to think on and work on the kind of the barriers. We have to restructuring the work on the restructuring in the communities, the social structural reality. So this is again, so micro to meso to macro level, every level we need to enter into to work as an anti-oppressive social work practices. So let's move on this topic. Oppression actually can be defined as the experience of widespread systematic injustice. So to understand the anti-oppressive social work intervention, so we have to understand what is oppression, and we have already discussed that you must be now be very much in a position to understand the aspects which are behind the oppression, behind the creating the disadvantaged community, creating the oppressed society. So oppression can be defined as the experience of widespread systematic injustice, right? So it embedded in the underlying assumption of institution that rules and the collective consequences of following these rules, right? So oppression is often a consequences of unconscious assumptions and biases and the reactions of well-meaning people in ordinary interactions. So whatever is the oppression is became the unconsciously developed assumption that we assume because of the being socialized into certain society, that they have already developed certain kind of the reality, and being the part of that society, being get socialized into that society, we became we developed that kind of the assumption. So for that reason there are certain theories which actually try to break this aspect, try to break this assumptional wrong assumptional aspect, that may be the critical analysis theory that actually ask you or guide you to go with the some kind of the critical thinking. All right. So oppression can be defined as the experiences of widespread systematic injustice. It is embedded in the underlying assumption that we have already discussed this. So anti-oppressive social justice, social or social work practice. So anti-oppressive, we could also call it as a social justice, social work practice, right? Is a framework that aim to address and combat various forms of such oppression that individuals and communities face due to the social, political, and economic inequalities, right? Because there are the communities where the lot people are haves not compared to the haves. Haves are little, haves not are larger, but this haves who is less in number actually controls. Because why they are in the less number? Because they don't want the majority comes to this part of the haves, right? So they hold the major power structure of any community or the larger society. So this rooted in social justice principle, um, um, anti-oppressive practices, challenges systematic power imbalances, discrimination and marginalized experienced by people based on their class, race, gender, sexuality, age, and any other social categories. Okay. So as Clifford is the first time used the term anti-oppressive, not exactly the first time, but he used the term anti-oppressive and make it quite popular. So to reduce an explicit value position that constructs social division, especially race, class, gender, disability, sexual orientation, and age, as matters of broad social structure, at the same time as being personal and organized issue, it looks at the use and abuse of power not only in relation to individual or organizational behavior, which may be overtly and covertly or indirectly racist, classist, sexist, or so on, but also in relation to the broader social structure. For example, the health, education, political and economic, media and cultural system, and their routine provisions of service and reward of powerful groups uh, at local as well as the national and international levels. These factors impinge on people's life stories in unique ways that have to understand in their socio-historical complexity. So media also plays very, as an important present day institutions, plays very important role in actually creating a lot of the realities, and depending on, actually they are depending on their own benefits and all, but it creates a lot and developing a lot kind of the new realities, and maybe working on the old realities, and maybe the new kind of the realities is as oppressed and as creating misunderstanding and putting the disadvantage into further kind of the problem. So that is another point of inquiry and point of discussion. So this whole definition actually clearly address the use and misuse of the power in a relationship across personal, family, and the community, and an organizational and structural level. Maybe the same person has been, disadvantaged and is not treated well in the community in large, or maybe in the office, but the same person coming back to the home and actually behaving very bad with their own family members, maybe with the wives or anything. So again, I could not use any kind of the a very biased statement that maybe sometimes the vice versa could be the reality, but majority of the cases the women's are more vulnerable, and they are being there are a lot the cases of the uh, so anyway, so community organization. So this definition clearly addresses the use and misuse of power in a relationship across personal, family, community, organization, and structural levels. These levels are interconnected rather than isolated, collectively shaping and influencing the social reality. So just moving ahead, key principle of anti-oppressive practices. So there are certain principles like the challenging power dynamic. These are the principles actually guides you as a professional social worker, that how to move with, and what are the things we have to keep in our mind, right? So first thing is about the challenging power dynamics, because the oppression is the result of the kind of the power structure of the community or maybe of a family. So that is what the representation or of the whole society and the community. So any family which is patriarchal is the part of the patriarchal society and community, and any family is believing in the matriarchal kind of the hierarchy, so they are the part of the matriarchal community, right? So family is the representation of their large society and large community. So challenging power dynamics is about anti-oppressive practices, recognizes the inherent power imbalance perpetuated by social institutions. This driving force of anti-oppressive practice is that art of challenging the inequality. So this is very important. Being an anti-oppressive social worker, we have to challenge the power dynamic, and again, so more the kind of critical way we have to work on this. Empowerment. So empowerment is another important thing, because we are working for the disadvantaged and oppressed class, oppressed section of the society, so that need the empowerment. So empowerment is the prime important principle that you have to go with, right? So empowering client is central to the anti-oppressive profession or anti-oppressive interventions, encouraging the social workers to take control of their own lives, make informed decisions, and challenges oppressive system. So by empowerment, you can make the community members who are oppressed, that they could understand what is going wrong with them, so they can take stand for them. For example, while conducting some survey regarding this sexual abuse, or particularly the kind of so when we asked to the women, did your husband beats you? So this the response was that uh, मेरा पति है, मुझे नहीं मारेगा तो किसी और को मारेगा, the kind of a state where just imagine. So this is what they are actually this is the part and parcel of what the social kind of the socialization they are into this, and they are the part of this power structure. They are very much accepted this, that the males are the superior than them. So this is what this that need to this challenge, they put the challenge, and this challenge is through very tactful manner, through by sensitizing them. So social worker must support clients in developing the skills, confidence, and then resources needed to advocate for themselves and their communities. Maybe on behalf of that particular underserved communities, you have to advocate them, you have to make them skillful, so that they could come forward and then take their own on their own behalf. So next is addressing structural inequalities. So addressing structural inequalities is emphasizing the importance of recognizing that and addressing the root cause of oppression, and such as racism, sexism, classism, and other structural inequalities. So social workers should work to dismantle these systems by advocating for policy change, social reform, and then more equitable resource distribution. Okay, just moving ahead, there are another principle like the cultural competencies and humility. So anti-oppressive practice requires as understanding and the appreciation of diverse cultures, for sure, right? In the cultural context, social worker must be culturally competent, sensitive, but more importantly, practice cultural humility. I means you have to understand the other culture as well as you have to accept it very with all kind of the understanding and proper acceptance aspect. So recognizing that they are constantly learning from clients and communities about their unique experience and needs. So which culture is good, which culture is bad, we should not be in that discussion, because everything is so subjective. We just have to accept that. We have to be understand their cultural demands and cultural context, every aspects of their life. And we also have to not just to accept, but we have to learn while we are working with them, right? So next is advocacy and activism. So this another principle is so important, because anti-oppressive social workers often involve advocacy and activism, because on behalf of the clients and communities, because they are voiceless, they are not sensitized, they are in constant fear because of the historically oppressed oppression throughout their life, or throughout the generations rather. So social worker must go beyond individual intervention to engage in social political action and challenges that unjust policies, institution, and practices. So any kind of the problem is with maybe at the micro level, you have to come from the macro level policy intervention and policy formulation, or from policy suggestion, or at least the program facilitation, or maybe it could be resource mobilization. All right. So moving ahead, next one is about the reflective practices. Prime important kind of the principle that you have to go with, that is the reflective practices. This crucial element of anti-oppressive practice is the continuous reflection on one's own values, issues, biases, assumption, preconceived notion. So because being human, you have some kind of the preconceived notion, we always have some kind of assumption. So social worker must constantly actually integrate self consciousness is so important, right? Because their own personality is maybe judging some other person. So this is very important, that you have to actually understand yourself. This interrogation is so important, that you have to actually come to the answer whether you are potentially compatible enough to work with this community or not, or you are yourself using any kind of the oppression, or that okay, this particular community is showing this because of that background. So this should not be like that. These are people are illiterate because of their maybe because of their religious reason. These people are behaving like this because of their cultural reason. So blaming to their culture, blaming to their background is actually, if you are doing that, so you have to check and recheck whether you are actually going with that kind of oppressive set of minds or not. So that need to be erased, that need to be worked on, and this reflective practices is a continuous process, because it's not like that you have to, okay, when before going to committee, I just make myself very confident that I'm going to the community, I'm not going to use any kind of preconceived notion. No, I have being a social worker, for me every community is equal. So just the words okay, or the one time oath is not sufficient, because maybe you're working with a such community for a longer period of time, and some in some institutions make you actually to rethink about, and then again your preconceived notion, that is very unconscious part, come back to your conscious part. That's why this is very important aspect, that continuous reflective practice is important. Reflective practices along with continuous reflective practices is important. Okay. Next, also the very important kind of principle you could say. So that is the what if anti-oppressive practices to provide appropriate and sensitive services that are need led rather than resources driven. It has to, I mean, this particular statement says that a person-centered philosophy is required, which is an egalitarian value system concerned with reducing the deleterious effects of structural inequalities upon people's lives, a methodology focusing on both process, which this methodology is about the person-centered philosophy. So, focusing on both process and outcome, and a way of structuring a relationship between individuals that aims to empower users by reducing the negative effects of social diaries and their interaction and the work they do together. So, if anti-oppressive practices to provide appropriate and sensitive services, so need to go with the person-centered philosophy. This means that focus is on each individual's unique needs, right? Experiences and strength. Within a community, there are a number of the individuals. Within a community, one community, maybe in different sets of the families. So you have to focus on every family's or every individual's unique need, experiences and strength, instead of treating clients as a part of particular system. Means in past you have worked with any Dalit community or any Dalit family. So maybe the another case comes to you, you just have to relate it. Okay, in earlier cases this was a reality. Maybe this problem is because of whatever the experience you had. No, it should not be like, because here this person-centered philosophy says that as the principle of individuality talks about, that every individual is different, so every case is different, every client is different, even the same individual in a different system, in different environment is different, in a different time is different. So whenever you deal with any client, you have to go with this person-centered philosophy, right? So these are the some principles which is very important to keep in mind while working with the anti-oppressive approach, anti-oppressive interventions with the disadvantaged community. Moving ahead, let's talk about some of the theoretical foundation of anti-oppressive. But it's again very important to at least handful of understanding of these theories is important while understanding the anti-oppressive intervention or anti-oppressive approach. So historically, the profession, the social work profession particularly, in attempting to understand, explain and offer solutions to the difficulties and experienced by the groups and the individuals who has drawn from, among others, the disciplines of like sociology, psychology, political science, history, philosophy and so on and so forth. So this multidisciplinary theoretical framework of social work, informed by anti-oppressive principles, provided social workers with tool to understand and respond to the complexity and the experiences of oppression. So for a good social worker in the area of anti-oppressive field, we have to be, at least, understand the different phenomena by understanding by using the different theoretical perspective. So I just have to pick few theories to make you understand. The very first theory is about the critical theory. Right, so critical theory highlights the role of power in society and societal structure and seeks to challenge the status quo by questioning how power is distributed, who is at the center of the power structure. It encourages critical reflection on how societal norms and institutionals maintain inequality. Means you have to very critically understand who is in the power, why this power structure is there, how this reality has created this kind of the power structure, and it urges social workers to challenge oppressive system. So critical theory reflects on the practices of society. It critically analyzes social structure and social institution from the point of view of their dominance effect on individual within the society. So critical theory gives you the critical thinking to analyze the different power structure of the community, to understand the kind of oppression, kind of the plight which has been there with the any kind of the disadvantaged or oppressed society. Social justice theory. So, in the social justice theory, it talks about the anti-oppressive practice is grounded in this, because advocating for a redistribution of power and resources to ensure equitable outcomes for all individuals, particularly who are in need or who are marginalized or oppressed groups. So, social justice theory is going hand to hand with the critical theory perspective, because if you go and come from the critical theory perspective, you have to see the power structure from the whole critical point of view. Social justice theory says is once you go with the social justice theory perspective, that it talks about and it actually guides you that you have to go with the social justice, you have to empower the community so they can get their social justice, you have to facilitate the social justice, you have to mobilize the social justice for the community. Okay, so then by providing social justice, you can be be a good initiator in bringing the anti-oppressive social work practice into that community. Next is about the feminist theory. So a lot of the operation, a lot of the theories has been designed around this around this gender perspective, and within the gender the women perspective, because is this time immemorial, male and female has came on this earth at the same point of that time, as many religious mythologies talks about, and also the evolution of the history of the humankind also says that. So, but how does this all happen? Why the male became the master of this earth, and then female became the inferior to them? So feminist perspective actually are crucial in anti-oppressive practices, focusing on the intersection of gender with race, class, sexuality, and other social categories. Feminist theory underscore how society, and sexism contribute to the oppression of women and other gender minorities, informing anti-oppressive intervention. So, feminist theory also emphasizes the importance of challenging normative power structure, rather fostering empowerment and advocating for systematic change. This aligns closely with the goals of anti-oppressive practices, because women, as in once uh, particularly half section of the society, are oppressed, and this oppressed class and oppressed section of the society actually coming with the idea of coming with the with the whole ideology of feminist aspect or feminist perspective. They looking the things from this perspective. I mean, understand that you are born with certain sex, that is totally a biological thing, but you grow with with your gender, actually along with your sex, that is very very part of that. But gender is a social construct around that sex. So you born with certain sex, and the gender has been developed around the society through your socialization. So gender is a social construct around the biological aspect of the sex, right? So as it is a social construct, so definitely in the social construct is which is with the time it has been become the reality, and anything which became the reality, whether it is correct or not, that is, I mean, later, I mean, and this is another point of discussion. But if it is correct or not correct, but it has become the reality, anything which has become reality is became the truth, right? So being the part of that society and getting socialized into that, we are actually equipped with that reality, and we understand, and we actually judging the others on the basis, on the parameters of only those reality, right? And that needs to be critically think on. So this actually, these inside feminist perspectives shape anti-oppressive intervention that are intersectional, inclusive, and more deeply transformative. So this need to be deconstruct or construct of the socialization process, that could be this socialization aspect, and we again have to think on the re-socialization of the new set of the community, where it's not that we are going to put, or feminist is not asking to put the males into the inferior aspect, but talking about the equality, talking about the equal pays. And so for that, in many social justice has given the equity to the women. They have given some special preferences to the women in many areas, just to give them equity for to give in the social justice, because they are historically disadvantaged section of the community, that is 150% of the section of the society. Next, interconnected to this feminist theory is about the intersectionality. Intersectionality is a concept developed by then Kimball's in 1989. That intersectionality actually emphasizes that people experiences oppression in multiple interconnected ways based on their overlapping social identities like age, race, gender, class. So in anti-oppressive practices, social worker must consider how different forms of oppression intersect and impacted each other and impacted the clients. For example, if you take the example of any Dalit woman, she belonged to the gender women, so as one of the oppressed class. She belonged to the Dalit as the oppressed caste. She belonged to the poor family as the oppressed economic class, right? So she also illiterate, coming as one disadvantaged person, disadvantaged client comparing to any literate one. She's living in the rural areas, or if she is disabled, so just imagine the how intersectionality put that women into the lowest strata of any community. So who are she is the most disadvantaged section of the community, and that what the social worker and anyone has to look into more critically, right? So that's why there are lots examples are there of intersectionality. So feminist theory is goes in in closer to the intersectionality. So these four theory I just have to pick to discuss with you, just to give you handful information, a little information, to make you more to go with this kind of the theoretical perspective, to understand the different phenomena of the community, that power structure, the gender perspective, the social construction of the community, and then how the intersectionality has been happened around this whole social construction aspect. Okay, moving ahead. So intervention based on anti-oppressive practices. So the perspective based on anti-oppressive social work practices. So this should not negate that risk of posed on any client, means how to intervene into that. Intervention based on anti-oppressive practice incorporate a risk and needs analysis of both is important. So because you are going to enter into the power structure, so there could be some kind of the risk associated for the agency you belong to, or maybe to that client and to that whole community. And then there are many needs for the intervention, so you have to analyze the risk as well as the needs. So needs is important to intervene and to resolve and to fulfill, and the risk is another hand is there. So you just have to be very critical enough, very professional enough to understand and to make a balance and how to intervene into that. So to work effectively, it is important to have few kind of the perspective in your mind that is flexible without losing focus. You always go with kind of very focused, right? And at the same time, you have to be very flexible. Along with your focus, you should not lose your focus, but you also have to be flexible enough, because as I've told you that it's a balance. You have to make a balance between the risk and the needs. So you have to fulfill the need, that is your focus, but you have to be flexible. If the risk is there for doing anything on particular day or particular time or particular power entering into some kind of the power structure, you can go some another way. You can reschedule it or something like that. So you have to be flexible enough. Second is about the includes the views of oppressed individual and individuals and groups. So that talks about that actually participation. We have talked length and breadth about the participation. Actually, in coming sessions, we all have to whole discussion in this participation, how we can maximize the participation of the community. This is so important. So includes the views of oppressed and oppressed individuals groups, so important, because maybe half cooked information, or you are not aware about the minute dynamics of the community. So anytime it's very surprising that you go with some kind of information or pre-information, and you actually many times you're surprised to know about some new kind of the reality. So participation actually very helpful to understand the very minute detail of any operation or any kind of the problems and the needs, is theoretically informed. So to make a balance between the risk and the needs, you have uh, at least theoretically informed that okay, this is the power. So this problem is arise because the community is the problem is around the theoretical, sorry, is around the power structure. So then you could understand this particular problem is around the gender aspect. So you could be, in a position to make a balance, to understand the reality of the community. For that, your theoretical perspective has to be clear on, right? Challenges and changes existing ideas and practices. Challenges and changes existing ideas and practices. You have to, as we have discussed, one of the principles is about the challenging the power structure. So you have to challenge some kind of the power structure, but not harshly. It should be very professionally, in a very humble manner, in a very polite manner, in a very artistic manner, sometimes with very some kind of any but with some creative manner, right? You can go with some kind of nukkad natak, you can show some puppet show, you can, use the walls to paint with some kind of slogans and then pictures. It's somehow anything which is visual is impacted, and its impacts is somehow is the larger, right? So challenges and changes existing ideas and practices there. Then can analyze the oppressive nature and organizational culture and its impact on practices. So it's also important to, analyze the oppressive nature of organization culture and its impact on practices. Maybe you are working with some organizations which is already having some kind of the oppressive ideas. As one of the principles that we have talked about, that this reflective practices, that you have to continuously reflect on yourself, integrate yourself, you have to identify yourself whether you are using your own, you are also been a part of that social construct, that you are using this oppressive ideas, and you're not, you are be sorry be very biased and having some kind of stereotyping. So you have to reflect and re-reflect every time. So for that scene, this is what is required for the organizational culture. You have to be to analyze whether your organization is having the same kind of the mindset or social construct reality they have. So you have to work them, you also have to sensitize them, and accordingly you have to make a balance between this. Includes continuous reflection and evaluation of practice. That's the same thing. You have to continuously working on the reflection and an evaluation of the practices. Has multidimensional changes strategy which incorporate the concept of networking, user involvement, partnership, and participation. So definitely it's a multidimensional, and this is the, as the problem is deep rooted, because you're working is an oppressed aspect, or the with a disadvantaged community, or any aspect of the anti-oppressive, you're going with anti-oppressive practices. So it is very multi-dimensional aspect. You may need some kind of the professional from other fields. You may also need of some the resources which is not been present. You have to mobilize resources maybe from the governmental sides or any NGOs or CBOs working in that area. So has a critical analysis of the issue of the power, both personal and structural. So you also have to understand the overall the power structure of that community, where you are working with, where you have to make a balance between the risk and the needs. All right. So after this all discussion, I hope and I'm sure that you are very much able to understand the different kinds of the anti-oppressive field and anti-oppressive area, where you could actually going to intervene maybe in a future, or you could at least develop the insights for those field and those areas. So very first is about addressing racism and child welfare. So another is about the disability rights advocacy. This could involve campaigns to raise awareness of about the ableism, and working to ensure compliances and with accessibilities and legislations, and promoting the inclusion of people with disabilities in all aspects of the community life, because disabled people face barriers to accessing public spaces, services, and employment due to the ableism, because they are not able physically, but emotionally and mentally they are so much able, in some time more than the normal able person. So there also is the right of their ableism. They are equally able, right? So anti-oppressive practices in the Indian context, this is the general context, right? Racism and then disabilities and all, and particularly taking some of the very, and apart from that, there are many examples are there, like the black women's rights. So because again, this is a huge area of intersectionality, that she's a woman, she's a black, there's a lot rights around that, there's a lot of the problems around that, as I have given the example of Dalit women, right? So anti-oppressive practices in the Indian context, like in India, anti-oppressive social worker practice is particularly very important given the country's complex social hierarchies. Our country is a huge, diverse country with a number of the social realities, with a number of the social constructions around the sex, race, religion, ethnicity, culture. We have multicultural country. We have lots of different sets of the language and all and all. So, and again, I mean, above all, the caste-based discrimination is very common in our country, particularly in the rural area. And religious conflict is also became a problem in our country. And you know, this is what, if any country is disturbed from inside, so it's very difficult for any society to develop from outside, and for in general. So for to develop, you have the societal well-being is required, and societal well-being required is possible only where the every unit as a whole system, every subsystem or every unit feel comfortable, feel connected, feel interconnected. When they are interconnectedness is there, where there's a bonding is there, so whole system actually flourish, right? So caste operation, so this is by facilitating access to the education, healthcare, employment opportunities, social workers work to actually dismantle barriers that actually prevent Dalits from fully participating in the society. So giving them provisions like reservation and all is totally is the kind of social services, social justice by the state side or by the government side or enact. But how much they are acceptable in the society, how much they are acceptable as they are allowed to live a dignified life, that is what the areas at the meso level, at the micro level, as a social worker we have to look into, right? So they are also collaborate with community organization and stakeholders to develop programs that foster Dalit leadership, enhance skills training, and create supportive networks. Through their efforts, anti-oppressive social worker aim not only to challenge existing caste hierarchies but also promote social justice and equality, contributing to more inclusive society where all individuals regardless of caste can thrive and live with dignity. So if it is not that, you should not start with the conflict with the caste system, with the lower Dalit to the upper caste. Rather, you have to just make them, this Dalit community, empowered through training, through resource allocations, through some kind of the positive discrimination, giving something extra to them, provide training, facilitating them with some kind of the programs and policies inclusive to them, or providing education, better education, providing jobs opportunity. So by giving them this, taking this particular community in isolation right now, not compare any in fighting spirit with any other community. Once this community is flourished, developed, empowered, definitely the gap between these two become minimized, and so the interconnectedness would be high. So we should start with the developing this unit, and then later on the connectedness with the other society is going to be happen, right? So this this sectoral development could be possible, could be done. That is the only the target approach. We have to pick this community and then develop them, empowered with them. That is what we can do as a social worker. This could involve partnering with Dalit rights movements, advocating for policy changes. So by policy changing, advocacy, this is at the macro level we can bring the changes for their life. So as this caste operation is the historically oppressed class, or historically they are oppressed, so we have to intervene at all level, at the micro to meso to macro level. Okay. So moving ahead, that is the religious minorities. So through community outreach, education, advocacy. These social workers empower religious minorities by implying their voices in decision making process and ensuring their access to essential resources and services. This minority could be in a larger community, Dalit living in a smaller number. That way they are the minority groups. So again, intersectionality comes here. They are in the lesser number. They are minority group. They are caste wise. They are Dalit group. So intersectionality put them in more disadvantaged position. Okay. So additionally, social worker also collaborate with the grassroots organization and community leaders to combat religious intolerance and violence, fostering an inclusive society where diversity is celebrated rather than feared. So, when there is a Eid, Ramzan, when there is a, Diwali or Ramanavami, or there any kind of the festival comes, or any religion of Christians like the Christmas and all end of the sick. So that community has to come forward to celebrate that, and that is what the part and parcel of Indian society, that usually since our childhood we celebrated each festival to each other as like the national festival that needs to be required. And if it is anywhere it is lacking, anywhere any kind of the gap is there, so the social worker as the anti-oppressive practice has to work. It's not like that you go in a community and then ask them to come forward. It's not at all. But once your agency is working in any area where you feel that kind of the division is there, you can work on that very tactfully, creating the spaces where the members of the all communities come together, give their own ideas, participate in the things. Even at the time of the after any kind of the violence, crisis intervention and then rehabilitation aspect has to be required in particular community. So that time you have to, as a social worker or as an agency member, you have to make the community participate in any kind of the reconstruction of the new kind of the collaboration and then cohesion within a community, bring the cohesion, bring the participation within a community, and then ask to the leaders from all the communities to come forward and to participate, so that the kind of inhabitants, the kind of the issues they have within them, maybe that issue is not from them, it has been created from any outside, so that could be resolved. So through participation, through proper communication is always the answer of many issues. All right, just moving ahead with the challenges. Apart from that, there are many other areas to intervene. So these are a few examples only. So just last aspect of this anti-oppressive practices, that is the challenges and criticism of anti-oppressive practices. Sounds so good, but it's not. It's very difficult to intervene, particularly in India, which is very diverse, multicultural, and where the idea and where the caste system as a socially constructed aspect or deeply imbibed in our society. So it's very complex, and many times the anti-oppressive practice is somehow complex and ambiguity, because anti-oppressive practice is complex, evolving framework, and some critics argues that it lacks clear guidelines for implications. And social workers may struggle to apply the principle of anti-oppressive practices in real-world context, where balancing individuals and system change can be challenging. Additionally, navigating power dynamics and addressing one's own biases requires constant self-reflection, which can be difficult in practices. Structural constraints. Social workers often operate with institutions that are themselves oppressive, such as government agencies, healthcare system, or welfare program. They themselves sometimes are in the idea of some kind of the, some biasness in their mind, some kind of the stereotyping in their minds, or stereotyping kind of a thing. So these systems may have some kind of the policies or practice that is limit to extent to which social workers can engage in anti-oppressive work. So for example, limited funding or rigid bureaucratic structures may make it difficult to challenge systematic inequality effectively, because sometimes it has been observed, and it is very true reality, that some programs and policies, programs and policies of has been developed for everyone, but it could not be reached to some, and it is reaching to some other. So this is what very systematically, keeping certain society, certain community, away from those kind of the benefits of the many programs and policies, and that need to be fair. here the role of the social justice and as an ideology is so much required. Burnout and emotional toll. Engaging in anti-oppressive practices, particularly when it involves advocacy and activism, actually requires and needs much of your participation and engagement. So, and it is also a kind of the lengthy process and time taken process. So maybe participating into that, maybe the agency is actually burned out because the result is not coming in a very short period of time. It's not like that you have to go to open the schools and delivering the or open any skill center, so where you make the participant skillful enough in a 1 year, 2 year, and 3 years. After 3, 4 years, you see the kind of the economic growth among them. So it's say it anti-oppressive is about the working on the structural aspect. So as it is the hundred and thousands of years of the reality has been formed, you cannot find the result in a year, 2 year, 3 years, 4 years. So it is what that's why the burnout and emotional toll is one aspect, one issue has been associated with the anti-oppressive approach. So complexity and ambiguity, structural constraints, and burnout and emotional, all apart from all these, and despite of all these kind of the challenges, even though it is very important aspect and then practice, because oppression is there, disadvantages committee is there, we have to move with this idea of anti-oppressive approach, maybe in some dilute form, maybe in some tailored form, right? So while the path of anti-oppressive practice is complex and filled with challenges, its commitment to dismantling oppression and promoting social change makes it an essential approach in the field of social work. So we have to keep it in mind, we have to go with this idea. So the complex nature of oppression is witnessed in the lives of the people who are marginalized in this society. So just let them go, like means they are, these communities are like this, and just let them. So it's not the way the social worker has to behave and to think on. So all the institution, all the whether it is NASW or American Association of Social, anywhere, or even the Indian ideologies of the social work talks about to think on the social justice, so to go with the human right, to to work for the underserved, to work for the marginalized. That is what is all about the social work. Overall demands, overall objectives, overall to make you better profession. Thank you very much, and these are some of the references you can go with. Thank you so much once again.